Many people say that those of us who want extinction should leave right away. This never made sense to me for many reasons, which is a topic for another video. But for now, I'm going to propose the opposite. Immortality, or rather a radical life extension, could be seen less as a personal good, though that would be valid too, and more as a tool to further extinction, for the ones who would be willing to do this at least. What many see as a contradiction mostly disappears once you separate the value of continuing your own life from the value of creating entirely new lives. Keeping an already existing person alive longer does not require producing another generation to replace them. And if that existing person is committed to reducing future suffering, the extra time could actually make some extinctionist goals easier rather than harder. There's a difference between wanting immortality because life is inherently desirable and wanting longevity because it's useful. An extinctionist could reject the first while supporting the second, but an extinctionist could also find their own life desirable too. Someone can personally want to continue living while still believing that creating more sentient beings is unnecessary and harmful. So the idea is not that extending life is automatically good. The point is that for someone who already wants to stay alive or doesn't mind staying alive, it could serve a larger extinctionist purpose. A normal lifespan limits how long one person can organize, write, research, persuade, build institutions, and develop technology. A person living for centuries could maintain this instead of relying on each generation trying to continue the work of the previous. That could matter a lot for a movement built around a goal that's probably going to take far longer than one person's natural life. Right now, every generation has to rediscover old arguments, regain lost political connections, and decide whether it even agrees with the priorities of the people before it. A person who remains alive for hundreds of years would not have to leave the entire project to someone who may reinterpret it into something completely different. It would also give one person enough time to watch their own ideas fail, change them, and try again, instead of spending a lifetime building something and never seeing the long-term results. Longer lives could allow researchers and advocates to work on better contraception, sterilization, wildlife fertility control, and other nonviolent ways of reducing future sentient populations. A lot of the technologies that would matter most are still limited, expensive, temporary, species-specific, or difficult to distribute. Someone who could spend 200 years improving those methods could potentially accomplish far more than someone who only gets a few working decades. And the longer a phase-out takes, the more important it becomes that the people working on it do not have to keep replacing themselves with newly created people. Cultural attitudes can take decades or centuries to change. Someone with a very long lifespan could keep advocating for extinctionism across multiple historical periods. Social values can change dramatically. A period of declining birth rates can quickly turn into aggressive pronatalism once governments decide they need more workers, soldiers, consumers, or taxpayers. Long-lived extinctionists would be able to see those cycles happen personally and adapt, instead of relying entirely on historical records. They could also keep the argument alive during periods when extinctionism is unpopular, instead of hoping somebody rediscovers it years later. Some extinction-related goals could require technologies that take centuries to develop. A long-lived person could remain involved in projects involving biotechnology, AI, ecosystem intervention, or space science without handing everything off. That could be useful for projects where the consequences are not obvious for decades. You could actually see whether an intervention worked, what unexpected problems it created, and how it needed to be changed. You would not have to design something at age 40 and hope that people 100 years later still understand what you were trying to accomplish. The same person could be there for the planning, the testing, the mistakes, and the corrections. A long-lived individual could potentially accumulate expertise, money, networks, and institutional power over time, then use those resources to support things that extinctionists want. Simply having the time to become exceptionally knowledgeable in one field, build organizations, fund research, or maintain long-term projects could make an individual much more effective. They could retain first-hand knowledge of what arguments, political approaches, technologies, and campaigns worked or failed, reducing the loss of experience between generations. There is also a difference between reading about a failed strategy and actually remembering why it failed. The details that get lost are often the parts that matter most: what people objected to, what compromises weakened the original goal, and what unintended effects nobody expected. They could carry that practical memory forward instead of leaving future extinctionists with fragments of it. And they could tell the difference between an idea that sounds new and one that was already tried a century earlier under a different name. If extinction were approached through gradual fertility reduction, ecological intervention, or advanced technology, the process could take a very long time. Long-lived people could monitor whether interventions are increasing suffering instead of helping. That matters because extinctionist interventions could be extremely high stakes. If a wildlife fertility program causes some ecological change that makes surviving animals suffer much more, the point should not be to defend the program just because it reduced births. The point should be to notice the harm and change course. More time gives the same people who understand the original goal a chance to evaluate the results. It would be much easier to keep the original purpose in view if at least some of the people who designed the intervention were still there to see what it became over the long term. A temporary population decline is not extinction. Long-lived advocates could remain active long enough to resist pronatalist reversals or technological developments that resist the rapid population increase and overpopulation issues for both humans and animals. This is one of the biggest problems with relying on temporary population decline. A civilization could reduce reproduction for 100 years and then undo all of it in a few generations. And future technology could make reproduction much easier, extend fertility, create artificial wombs, or make large-scale population growth possible in ways we cannot predict yet. Longevity would not guarantee that extinctionists win the argument, but it would at least keep experienced people around long enough to keep participating in it. Another advantage is that longevity could reduce the need for replacement generations in ordinary society too, and just as long as it's optional. If people expected to remain healthy for centuries, the idea that every generation has to produce another generation just to keep institutions, families, businesses, and knowledge functioning could weaken. That would not automatically make people antinatalist, of course, but it could remove one common argument for reproduction, that society literally needs a constant supply of replacement humans because everybody dies after a few decades of adulthood. Longer lives could make a shrinking population easier to manage because experienced people would remain alive and capable for much longer. That could make voluntary population decline less disruptive and therefore politically easier to tolerate. Of course, there would have to be a way to undo it. This would be very important. It would have to be under our control, ideally not having to rely on anyone else, like a doctor needing to agree to do a surgery to take some device out of you, and it would need to be free to undo. A person might agree to live for centuries under one set of circumstances and feel completely differently after a major injury, the death of everyone close to them, political collapse, imprisonment, or simply changing their mind, preferably within a second if something tragic were to suddenly happen. So I would not support a form of immortality that traps someone in existence. The whole idea only makes sense to me if continued life remains voluntary, like a switch you can turn off, or even just thinking about it, since there will be people who can't turn off the switch. But this is getting into fantasy territory now and not just sci-fi. So I guess this is one of the risks that people would need to agree to if they were to want a prolonged life for whatever reason. If the scientists who figure out whatever universe-destroying method, or even a planetary one, if they have moral issues with the premature end of individuals, or if anyone else who needs to get involved, for example, like politicians or funders, then this could be a way to solve that. This wouldn't be ideal in my opinion because so many things could go wrong the longer you wait, but say we phase out the species through non-reproduction, and a team of people, whoever is needed to trigger it, stays behind. They would need a prolonged life to do that. This would be a much better situation than a select group of people who haven't been affected by whatever birth control method having the next generation of children in the hope that they would finish carrying out the mission. Instead of saying, we need another generation so somebody will still be here to finish this, the same existing people could remain. Because no matter how you raise them, how much you try to teach them the importance of this, when it comes down to it, they are their own people. They may be the type to not understand how bad that bad can get. No parent can guarantee what an adult child will believe. They may decide to continue the species. If animals haven't been completely phased out yet, they may decide, you know what, I like this lion and want to keep it. Let's make more lions. With radical longevity, there would be less reason to gamble the entire outcome on the beliefs of people who do not even exist yet. Whereas we already know that the existing extinctionists that came before their children are most likely dedicated to the cause. We have more of a chance with the known than we do the unknown. Of course, even the existing can change their minds over any of these things during a very long life, so longevity is not some perfect guarantee of consistency. But at least you would be dealing with people who had already chosen the project for themselves instead of creating new people and assigning the project to them before they even exist. And none of this means that immortality itself would somehow cause extinction. It is only a tool. The same technology could just as easily be used by pronatalists to keep humanity going longer, by conservationists to preserve species indefinitely, or by people who want to spread life throughout space. What matters is what people do with the extra time. But for an extinctionist who is already alive, wants to remain alive, and wants to spend that time reducing future suffering, and maybe eventually eliminating it, a radically longer lifespan wouldn't contradict extinctionism at all. So when someone says that an extinctionist should prove their beliefs by dying sooner, I think they are mixing up two completely different things. The goal is not to make a few existing people disappear as fast as possible, and by a very inefficient method that won't even cause extinction. The goal is to stop creating new suffering. If living longer made someone better able to do that, then from an extinctionist perspective, a longer life could actually be useful. And maybe some trusted non-sciencey people could even get tickets to see the end this way. I would love to experience the end no matter what method it is. If it turns out to be something explosive, I'd still volunteer to stay behind and push the button. And even though we want to experience vacuum decay or probably any string theory method, it would still be nice. Which I tell people that are worried about this all the time. Future beings wouldn't even be aware these things are happening because it would be too fast. So that's fortunate for them, but unfortunate for me, because I would really like to experience something like my particles disappearing before my eyes, or look up at the sky and see everything collapsing in on itself. That would make me so happy.